Hello, this is Becca Petunia, and welcome to ToughPigs at 25, a Muppet fan podcast from ToughPigs.com. That's right, ToughPigs is 25 years old now. That's as old as Eric Jacobson's time playing Miss Piggy. Anyway, 5 years ago, Joe Hennis sat down to interview each member of the ToughPigs team in a podcast we called Tough Pigs at 20. Now, 5 years later, I'm sitting down to talk to the folks who have joined our family since then. How did they get started in Muppet fandom? What brought them to Tough Pigs? All this and more in our most self-congratulatory mini-series yet. I'm so glad to be joined today by a dear friend of mine, one of my fellow moderators on the Tough Pigs Discord, and one of my fellow queer folks at Tough Pigs. I'm of course speaking about Katie Lynn, who joined the Tough Pigs team sort of approximately in 2021, sort of approximately shortly after Tough Pigs' 20th anniversary.
The shadow staff.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that. Katie Lynn has been pulling strings behind the. Muppets don't really have strings, most of them. Some of them do. In Emmett Otter, they did, but it looks weird, so they kind of stopped doing that so much. But Katie Lynn has been pulling the strings behind the scenes for longer than you think. And like I said, I'm so glad that they're getting to sit down and talk to me about their time.
Happy to be here, Becca. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for noticing that cue. Uh,
This is why they didn't put me up front for a while. They had
yeah,
to
this is why you were pulling the strings.
wasn't ready
But
for prime time.
Katie Lynn, I feel like you have such an interesting story with Tough Pigs. As we mentioned, half jokingly, this sort of like you as the shadowy puppeteer behind the scenes for a while. But also just like and I don't mean this in a judgy way, but you weren't really involved with online Muppet fandom in a big way until around when you started working with Tough Pigs. A lot of the other people that I've been interviewing for this project and that, will be coming later in this podcast series, like, oh, we're involved, Cam Garrity joined our team very recently, but Cam Garrity did the Puppeteers podcast for years. And JD Hansel joined the site around the same time as you. But JD Hansel had a podcast of his own and had a variety of Twitter accounts. One day, I just remember Joe telling me that there was someone named Katie Lynn who we were working with now. And that's just so, again, that was a real unexpected experience for me, but something I'm very glad happened. So I guess my first question that's going to lead to this story is, how did you get started being a fan of the Muppets?
A fan of the Muppets. Well, I think almost everyone on staff is going to say that it started in childhood. And surely enough, I watched the Muppet Show when it was on Nickelodeon, whenever it would popped up. My family loved the Senior Wences episode. We thought he was hilarious.
That's a great episode, so I'll
I,
accept that.
I mean, to be fair, I think we laughed more at Senior Wences than any of the things that he did with the Muppets. But I mean, there were plenty of other episodes that we enjoyed as well. Um, but in my house, like there was always a television on, and I have seen so many movies in part because you would just be flipping through the channels and stop wherever something looked good. And so I think for the longest time, I'd only ever seen the Muppet movies like from 15 to 30 minutes in until the end, because that's just how we watched television. There was no like must see TV. Um, we did have an illicit satellite dish where we could intercept certain signals, and so we did have Fraggle Rock. Not, don't tell HBO.
I was just about to interrupt you and say that I actually do have David Zaslav on the other line. And this has been a 5 year long sting operation. So
That's what's been happening since I joined. They're like, aha,
we got
we've
him,
got them
boys.
now. Yeah, so most of my formative memories are of Fraggle Rock in terms of Jim Henson work. And I there are just so many like episodes that are stuck in my brain, like the Incredible Shrinking Moki was definitely one that I remembered for a long time without necessarily knowing all of the names to the episodes and exactly what happened. Sesame Street is honestly kind of a blind spot, despite the fact that my house for like 18 years did not have somebody in the appropriate age bracket for Sesame Street. Um, but yet it was never a thing we had on in my house. It was something we would watch when we went to my grandmother's house, who only had over-the-air channels. And so we would, Sesame Street was one of the best things that we could get on the over-the-air channels. So from there, it was just like a passing familiarity until I started realizing what was going on behind the scenes. And that, I guess, is the beginning of my official Muppet fandom because I am 100% admin. I am a behind the scenes sort of person most of the time. I can organize you a thing, I can research you a thing, but it is very rare that I'm the one producing the thing. So I didn't come into the fandom until I realized just how awesome it was behind the scenes for Jim and Frank and Jerry and Richard and all them, and what kind of environment that they had going on. It was so joyful and so fun that it's just like, how could you not be a fan of that, regardless of, and it comes through on screen.
You approach this in a very different way than I feel like a lot of other Muppet fans. And I mean that in a good sense. Something that I know Joe and I have talked about before is just the idea that like everyone sort of has their own place in fan culture. And again, I think like everyone has their own like thing that appeals to them about the Muppets, that appeals to them about, all of these projects. And, again, and I think this love of the behind the scenes stuff is part of why you like the Dark Crystal more than a lot of the rest of our team. But I guess the question then is like, so what led you to Tough Pigs in the first place? Because again, you weren't like on the Tough Pigs forum back in the day, 20 years ago, like
Not in its
most of
heyday,
us were. And
no.
again, I don't mean this in a judgy way, obviously, but like what brought you to us?
It really was the Moving Right Along podcast. I love listening to Ryan and Anthony. And at the end of every single episode, they would say, "Come join us on the Tough Pigs forum." Despite, its waning popularity at the time.
No one was posting, people would post there like once a day and that was it.
It's except for when, the podcast went up, then there was a lot to discuss. And so I was just like, you know what? I bet there's something really interesting happening on the Tough Pigs forum. And I am not a stranger to forums that, you know, when people talk about their online lives and people are, they're like, "Oh, I'm a Twitter person, I'm a Reddit person, I'm a Tumblr person." Like I was always a forums person. And so I was just like, yeah, if there are still forums going on, I can handle that. So I jumped in and was overwhelmed with just the amount of history that was there. And so mostly just kept, chose the ones that seemed to be new, that came out with every article, that came out with the podcasts, and caught up on those. I think I might have read the entirety of the Moving Right Along podcast to catch up to where I was, which I think I started maybe halfway through Muppets
Yeah,
Take
I think
Manhattan.
that would have been around the same time because you know how I know that this is when you were starting to get involved with Tough Pigs is Hubba Wah
Oh yeah.
debuted at the end of the Muppets Take Manhattan season because my first episode
Aha.
of Hubbawa was a Muppets Take Manhattan episode with Anthony and Ryan to celebrate their season ending. And I bring this up because one of the first things that you started doing with Tough Pigs, that at least that I remember, was transcribing a lot of our podcasts. And I remember Joe emailing me and being like, so Katie Lynn is going to be transcribing your podcast now. So if you can send Katie Lynn your scripts. And I was sitting there and I was like, I don't know who this person is, but I guess I'll send them my scripts. Was there anything like how did that start? And is there anything that happened before that that I'm not aware of?
So, as you mentioned, there was the Tough Pigs at 20 podcast. And so once I was in the podcast mode, at that time I was driving, an hour and a half to work and then an hour and a half back. So I had a lot of audio listening time.
I would go bananas.
That's just, the daily routine for people living in the DC metro area. So I had a lot of time to fill with lots of podcasts. So once I was on the moving right along train, I just picked up all of the other.
Which weren't that many at that point. Again, there was
Well, there was 15 seconds to
and
curtain.
then Muppets
Uh,
2015 at 50 at Muppets the sitcom the podcast Muppets the
yes.
sitcom the podcast, I believe it was called.
Yes, and I actually haven't listened to that yet because I still haven't watched the
Katie Lynn, I say this all
2015
the time, and I'm
series.
gonna say this on the air now. I want to do like a podcast project with you or an article series with you where we are where you are Dante and I am Virgil and I guide you through some of those depths like Muppets 2015. Because again, like I said, your fandom works in a very different way than a lot of the rest of us. And you've never really felt the need to be like a completionist in the same way that, like a Shane is who's seen literally everything. So it's just so interesting. Again, I don't mean that in a judgy way or to say that your fandom is less or something, because that's not how I feel.
Well, you keep saying that, so I'm starting to doubt it. But no, teach me, Becca. Teach me about Echo Smith.
You too will wish that you could be like the cool kids because all the cool kids they seem to fit in. Um, But I digress because we were talking about you were listening to a lot of these podcasts and the Tough Pigs at 20 podcast, the aforementioned Tough Pigs at 20.
Yes. And there were a few people who said that, they just reached out. They emailed Joe and said, "Hey Joe, I have ideas. I love what you do. I'd like to be a part of this." And so I was like, "Well, I'm gonna shoot my shot. I want to put myself out there. I love this community already, despite how very little time I had spent in it." And I sent, oh my God, sorry, Joe, it was a very long email. But it included several ideas for articles that I thought might fit on the website. It included a fully written article that has never made it to the website, so it must not have been as good as Joe thought it was because he told me it was, so he just swept it under the rug. It's called, let me see, Fulfilling Promises. How does the Muppet movie perform?
Honestly, that sounds pretty
And it was
good.
basically
I'm gonna have to text Joe.
it was basically just answering all of the questions in the Rainbow Connection, which might have actually appeared in um some other type of form on the website, so it didn't make any sense. But in that, I also sort of offered like, if you don't let me write for the site, that's fine. My humor is not necessarily your humor. I can do other things. I'm a librarian. I've got research skills. I've got a neurotypical brain, so I can I enjoy sometimes like boring tasks that other people would be like, why do this? And so I think that is what I immediately set to. So being a fan of the podcasts, I offered to transcribe them. And let's see, what was the first one I don't even remember what the first podcast he was doing right at that time. It was just starting. But he also sent me on set me on another.
Yeah, you were talking to me a little bit about this, a secret task that I didn't know was going on 5 years ago when you joined the team.
Yeah. So, Joe, I think, had just finished 15 Seconds to Curtain, at least one of the sets of that. And he was looking to maybe do another season of that, which would involve, contacting these people that he had an interest in interviewing. And so he needs their contact information or their agent's contact information. And so he gave that to me. He's like, here is this list. Feel free to add anybody else who you can think of who are tangentially related to the Muppets or Muppet fans or really just anybody who you think would be cool for us to interview. So I went around and collected as much contact information and into a gigantic spreadsheet. And as far as I know, Joe has not yet done anything with that one.
Best as I
Uh,
know not, again, seeing as I didn't even know this sheet existed, and I tend to be pretty on top of things around here.
but he's got it. So he's got contact information for, Mark Hamill's agent and etc. So let's get Mark Hamill on here. It'll happen someday.
Maybe.
It's possible. But yeah, so it was stuff like that. So a lot of behind the scenes administrative tasks that really kind of took some pressure off of Joe or Ryan and Jarrod, I assume, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else who all knew I existed.
I'm not
Um,
sure anyone did. Again, and here's the funny thing. At the time, my only interaction with you was sending you Hubbawa scripts and having you transcribe them. And your icon on your Gmail at the time was just an Arctic fox. So I
Still
had,
is.
oh, okay, who knew? I haven't Gmailed you in a while. Now I usually just DM you. But so like I had no idea who you were, what you were. In my mind, you were just an Arctic fox. But again, in time you did a lot of transcriptions, but gradually you just started doing more and more for the site and for us behind the scenes of the site. And I feel like well, I guess it was shortly after Tough Pigs's 20th anniversary that we started toying around with other means of communication. And I feel like before there was the public Discord that you and I and Matthew Soberman now moderate. We had the staff Discord. And I feel like that's when I really started to get to know you, and we all started to understand you and your very unique way of thinking a little bit better. And I mean that again in a positive way. And boy, is the lady protesting too much right now.
Yeah, I think some of the first articles that I wrote for the website were Fraggle
Makes
reviews
sense.
because especially for that first and second season, there were just a ton to do. So it was just like all hands on deck. Here's this person none of you have heard of. They're gonna take two or three articles, and I think one of those somebody actually said, "Well, this is a different way of
But that's
of writing
but
these."
that's such a wonderful thing. I'm trying to find which one was your first. I think it was Finger of Light.
Y yes, I think that was the one that was looked at and been like, "Well, that's not usually how we write these reviews, but okay."
I'm gonna have to reread that. I haven't reread it in a while. I know I read it at the time, but it was 3 years ago.
Who has time? Who has time for this?
So, yeah, looks like in December 2023, we introduced the Tough Pigs public Discord server. So, only a couple of months after you wrote your first article for Tough Pigs, we were all like, yeah, Katie Lynn's in charge.
Well, again, it's another sort of admin task that I was like, yeah, I can spin up all of these rules and things.
And again, like I said, I've really appreciated working with you in that sense because I think you have just such good judgment about so many of these things and you're so level-headed about so many of these things. I've worked very closely with you on a lot of behind the scenes stuff at this point, and I consider myself pretty lucky to have worked closely with you behind the scenes on a lot of this stuff. So,
Imagine working with Shane.
yeah, well, that's the problem. Like, I mean, compared to everybody else, and listen, you think I'm talking to everyone right now, but Katie Lynn, I'm only talking to you. Um, Everybody else is really terrible except for you
This is why they demolished Muppet Vision 3D, Becca.
because I made this joke too many times. So I feel like at this point, your articles kind of started to take two very different forms. Obviously, you were still doing some episode reviews and roundtables. You transcribed Fraggle Talk back to the Rock. Was that the last podcast season you transcribed? I
Probably,
think
because,
so.
then I had, other things in my life. Things change. Time disappears.
Yeah. And I feel like if I had to characterize Katie Lynn articles, there's two kinds. There's the ones where you are obsessing about an extremely minor detail, such as a love letter to Muppet Eyebrows or the Tina and Gerald Teeth episode of 70 or 70 Muppets, which I guess is a podcast, not an article, but
Oh, it will be an article. Don't you
oh,
worry.
I know. You've been talking to me about that article for so long that I had to explain to you who Rodeo Rosie was at the time. Because that was where you heard about her first, not the podcast. But
Exclusive. I get exclusives, people.
exclusives to a character who has been appearing in books since 1977. No, earlier than that, 1972 or something. But anyway, I digress. My point is, the other articles are the ones you have done about some elements of queerness. Sometimes with me, either directly with me, as with the Junior Gorg article that we did, or through my Pride Month series that I sort of take on the editor role for those. Um, so there's two very very interesting sides to the Katie Lynn coin. Let's talk a little bit about eyebrows and stuff like that first. Why do you love eyebrows and stuff like that?
And stuff like that. I love the Muppets, not as a whole, but as the parts. Obviously, I mean, actually, if anything could make it, anybody could make just eyebrows work, it would be Muppets and Jim Henson Company.
I
But
mean, nobody
obviously,
the floating face is not really that far from just eyebrows. He has no eyebrows, and yet he proves that just eyebrows could work.
I mean, what is slimy? But just an eyebrow that you put
K
a smile and
Katie Lynn, you are wrinkling my brain.
But yes, because like or Java. Anyway, but yeah, so there are so many distinctive features about Muppets that give them personality, that give them interest for people to look at. And the more you sort of focus on these small things like teeth and eyebrows, the more you realize that, like, there probably wasn't that much thought put behind them. But what do we do on Tough Pigs other than overthink things? And it's it's still part of what makes it all work. So somebody is putting thought into which eyebrows work for this character and which ones should have teeth and not have teeth, or long stringy arms versus live hands, etc. And it really, I'm kind of, I like to think that I am bringing attention to the artistry that is puppet design and how important it is for the development of the character. Because you know what? If Dr. Teeth didn't have the long, stringy arms, would he still have the same personality? Would Jim have played him the same way?
I think there is a certain je ne sais quoi to the design that I feel like a lot of people overlook. But I think it's one of those things that like, you know a Muppet when you see it, and like that is this weird thing to say because like there's so many things that are like Muppets, Eureka's Castle or Alf or Yoda or the Helpsters, my good friends the Helpsters, but they're not Muppets. And there's something about them that are not the same. And I feel like as we get down to the nitty-gritty, you start to realize some of those things. But I think there are these really unique choices that go into a lot of the Muppet designs. And like, we can gripe about Rodeo Rosie's teeth as much as we want, and you and I both have done so. But we do remember them.
They are memorable, maybe because of their horrific teeth or bushy
And
eyebrows.
and isn't art anything that just evokes anything that is created by a human and evokes a strong emotion?
Not a negative emotion that it exists in the first place. Well, right, it is something that elicits a reaction. And Jim Henson's Muppets elicit many reactions. Horror at their teeth, joy at the fact that they're being flipped in the air. I would love it if a physicist could do a rundown of the physics of what makes a penguin flip so perfectly. Um, and like if the fact that these thoughts are what go through people's minds, like how did they do that? How do they make them look so interesting? Why do we want to rewatch them so we can look at more details? Like I the first time I went to Momi and saw some of these
It's
puppets up
incredible. It's
close, it is
incredible.
incredible. And I think we got the Imagination Unlimited touring exhibit in Maryland, and I went to that, and I just like was taking such detailed close-up pictures, and I was just like, I'd never noticed that detail before, and nobody would have seen it in 1970s television because we wouldn't see it in 2026 television because it's such a fine detail that even in HD, no one's going to notice the detail on a belt buckle. But it's there, and the fact that it is there is a testament to the people who are working on these things. It is a testament to how this character came to be the character that they are. Like if not the country trio?
Yeah. I know what you're talking
Okay.
about, and yes.
Okay. They sing Tomorrow.
The country
Um,
trio,
yes.
Jim, Frank, and Jerry, the country
Jim,
trio.
Frank, and Jerry. Yes. So I was looking at them and they have such interesting details on theirs, on their costumes. And it's just like, did they have to go that hard for three characters that were in theory just Jim, Frank, and Jerry? And like it probably did inform the way that they were performed. And so all of that just encompasses the gestalt of Muppetdom. It's phenomenal. And I think each of these individual pieces is worth noticing and thinking about and getting obsessive over and maybe getting, writing poetry about.
Related to this, Caitlin, was your first time seeing actual Muppets being performed live when you went to Sesame Street with us last year?
No.
Okay.
It just missed it because I went to Momi for the Jim Henson birthday celebration. And then like immediately after that, like 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, probably, like maybe the next week, Kermit came down to Maryland. And JD and I went to go see Kermit
Right, right.
do a Kermit and Matt Vogel talk
Who?
that was being had just a friend of Kermit's.
Okay, okay.
Yes, so they both got to talk about their work with the Muppets, and and Heather Henson was there, and Lucas Ross was there, and it was just like, hey, we just saw you a couple weeks ago. How's it going? And but that was the first time I'd ever seen pu Muppets being performed in person, and it was just like everybody says. Like, n even when you can see how it is done, it does not change. It just makes you appreciate it even more.
Again, and that's what I was bringing up because you want to talk about seeing those details, up close. There's nuances to how the characters like are performed that goes even further, it feels like. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just something that's so wonderful to appreciate. And again, I remember seeing you appreciate the little subtleties, the little visual subtleties when we were on set.
But what I didn't get with the Kermit event was Kermit with anybody else. It was just Kermit, but when we went to Sesame, I got to see those performers working together. I got to see how they play off of each other when they're in character, when they're not in character, and that was just pure joy. And I mean, I think it was to you that I turned when we got to see Oscar the Grouch, and I just went like, "It's Oscar!"
Pretty sure it was me, yeah. And yes. I mean, listen, I got your Christmas card with you and Slimy on it.
Yes, it was a very important moment.
Still on my fridge. Almost a year later.
Is it because it involves Pokemon on the front?
It does involve Pokemon on the front, but we have the back facing out.
Aw.
So um but anyway, as I was saying, the second kind of Katie Lynn article are the ones related to pride. And one thing that's kind of interesting that I learned this year during our pride drive is that you kind of learn to conceptualize your identity through your time in the Muppet fandom.
Which I'm sure is very strange.
I mean, as
Just like
somebody
everything
as
else.
somebody else who came out and then wrote a long article about how learning about Prairie Dawn helped me realize I was trans. Maybe I don't find it that strange, Caitlin.
No, it's really, I mean, how much of queerness and our knowledge about it comes from only from, how do I say this? For some people, there is no question. They just know that there is something about them that isn't like the people that they see around them. And other people, like me, I was just like, okay, I'm just like everybody else, not knowing that I'm not like everybody else. And it took a very long time for me to realize that I wasn't like anybody else. Not, I mean, not like most other people, because I wasn't putting myself in situations where I saw that I acted any differently. And so it wasn't until I saw way more people being like, hey, I am asexual, and this is how I see the world and how I interpret Muppets and being a fan. And I'm like, oh, light bulb.
It's one of those things where our identities can only be constructed, within the society around us, if that makes sense. And you being a part of the Muppet fandom has exposed you to different facets of the society around you, and that can be a real learning experience. So we don't have to go into like a ton of detail about this on this podcast. Folks can read the article you wrote this year for Pride Month. Caitlin, what was it called?
How Muppet fandom helped me find my queer identity. Nailed it.
Okay. How Muppet Fandom Helped Me Find My Queer Identity.
That was not as long as Beth's. I when I was trying to write it, the title of it for in my article, I was like, Muppet gender fairy beacon.
Everyone
It was
does
a long
things a
one.
little differently. But I think folks should definitely check that out. And again, I think it's like I said, one of the things that I love reading from you are just your very different, very unique takes on a lot of these aspects of life and the universe and everything.
I know I find it fascinating to read how everybody else sees these things. It's especially when it comes to like Kermit and Piggy's relationship. It seems like everyone has an opinion, everybody has an understanding of how that should be or is or should not be, and I'm just like, meh. Not the most interesting part of this. And it's interesting because it clearly is the most interesting part of the Muppets for so many people. Just wouldn't be dragging it into the spotlight for the Muppets. Should have been a huge uh light bulb for me.
Katie Lynn, what do you think the Muppets should do next?
They should come to my house.
Okay.
I've got a nice guest bedroom they can stay in. Uh, Probably not as much room as Ma Bear, but we'll make it work.
Thank you so much for being here with me today, Katie Lynn.
What should they do next in show business?
Yeah, the business of show.
The business of show. Um, you know what? I would love to see more of them putting on a show. I won't necessarily say that it should be the Muppet Show, um, but like allowing the performers to go out there. I Yes, an unscripted show. I feel like if we just put all the performers with the characters that they know and maybe allow them to add some additional ones as they think are necessary, give them a constraint for the episode, and then just let them go nuts. Because like I feel like the constraint of say a prompt and then seeing the result would be magic. And in the year of 2026, there is no reason that that can't just happen and be a success. Like, I feel like Dropout TV, if it has taught us nothing else, it's that you can put small fences around really funny people and they will make you laugh. They will make you cry. They will give you something to think about for many years to come. And I think the group of people who work for the Muppets can make that happen if I don't say we, I have no power. If the people who have power give them that freedom.
Now I will thank you for real. Thank you so much for being here, Katie Lynn.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Becca. You've been a fantastic partner in crime ever since you realized that I was not an Arctic fox.
I mean, it's true. You are not an Arctic fox, and let me tell you something. Nobody's perfect, but I was a little disappointed to learn that fact. Because it would have been much cooler if my partner in crime was a talking Arctic fox, like we were in the Golden Compass or something. Anyway,
Ooh. No, sorry. That's the Arctic. I'm from the Antarctic. I am actually a penguin.
oh, okay. That's why I was confused. Katie Lynn, where can people find you if you wish to be found?
Don't tell people on the internet where you live, Becca, so you have to throw them off.
Never let them know your next move. I don't think anyone could. I hope it made a sound, but I doubt it. But I did the thing where you tap your head.
You can find me on toughpigs.com, writing all of the weird articles that Becca says are okay. That
I
it's
did
okay that
not
they're
say
weird.
that. I did
No, she said
not
that they were
say they were
terrible and
okay.
you should not. Yes, you can find me on toughpigs.com writing various articles and reviews. You can find me on the Tough Pigs Discord where I am a moderator. And you can find me on Blue Sky at the letters K and T and then LYN, KT Lynn. Um, yeah, find me in all those places being weird about things.
Thank you so much for being here. Everyone should follow toughpigs.com on all social media and stuff like that. And we'll see you on the Discord. Tough Pigs at 25 is a Muppet fan podcast brought to you by toughpigs.com. It is hosted by Becca Petunia, produced by Jarrod Fairclough, and edited by Becca and Jarrod. Theme song by Alec Koff. For more Tough Pigs podcasts and articles, visit us at toughpigs.com or at ToughPigs on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. Support Tough Pigs on Patreon or by checking out our merch on TeePublic. Happy 25th birthday, Tough Pigs!